Welcome to What's Your Story, where we, Jamie Marco,
and Stan Brown,
delve into the extraordinary lives of everyday people.
Listen in as we uncover the unique tales that shape who we are,
one story at a time.
Hey, let's get ready to explore today's story.
Let's do it. Hi, Dad. You're looking super colorful today.
I wanted to bring a little color to the podcast, if you don't mind.
Well, I went all like blank white today.
Is that to pick your actual mood, your number, so to speak?
Oh, yes. So my number, yeah. So, well, first of all, what is your number today?
Well, after my 2.5 mile walk this morning, it's about a 9.25.
Nice. I'm not there yet, but I had a fantastic day yesterday, as you may be aware.
I was with you.
I know. So I'm still kind of reeling off of that. So I'm like at a good 8.5. I didn't get any exercise
You're
today yet.
processing, so to speak?
What's that?
You're processing?
I am. I haven't had a chance to get in like a workout yet, or like a walk or like a meditation. So
one could actually say it was a magical evening.
It was a magical day. And as we all know, it was my birthday. Well, not everyone knows, but it was my birthday yesterday. And I am not like a big, need to go out for dinner and drinks kind of person. I wanted to do something adventurous. So during the day, David and I went to the tree climbing course, which was just so fun. And it was like a rainy, overcast day. And it was just awesome. Like there was, I showed you the video, you've seen it, but I'd
rather watch than do it.
Maybe I'll share it. But there was like one part of the end of the course is where you just stand on the platform and jump off and you would belay. And I saw David do it and I knew exactly what happened. You just go flying down. It you jump for a minute and then it slowly belayed you down. What felt like 30 minutes. I stood there and I felt like my feet were glued to the platform. I couldn't do it.
The fear of heights, the fear of stepping off into nothing, even though you knew you were protected.
Yeah, the fear of everything. I was just, I didn't think my arms were strong enough to hold me, but you don't need your arms to hold. I mean, sure. Every thought was going through my head. I finally did it, and we'll talk about that at another time.
Here's my question. I had one moment in my life when I overcame my fear and I became really much stronger. Did you get any kind of a feeling after you did it successfully, looking back?
I mean, I was crying up there, and then when I came down, I started crying again too. And I think it was just an overall I don't know. I don't know if I'd be able to do it right away next time. I don't know. That's a great question. I want to do it again to see if I'd be able to do it right away next time.
I got you. It'll come to you.
Yeah. So my heart rate was up. I mean, I think at the highest it was 160 at some point. And then we had some lunch and then we decided to switch gears and be performed by other people who kind of take the leap, as you know. So tell them about what we did last night.
Well, the better part of the day started out in you doing something that I always thought it was important. On your birthday, which was 7-Eleven, of course, we didn't get any free Slurpees. But I always thought that when it's your birthday, you should actually sing happy birthday to your parents because we're the ones that created you. And
I did.
You thought about it. I didn't say a thing. You called first thing in the morning and you sang your thank you song. And that was terrific. That set the tone for the whole day.
Were you really thinking about it before I did it?
Absolutely.
So funny.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The time of all these aliens that are invading our systems, we're going to communicate actually, we do it now telepathically.
100%.
It's a question of everyone's doing it. You just have to listen, open up and listen, read the signs, and perceive it. It was great. Good start.
But that kind of led, thinking about telepathy or telepathy.
That's a fish that grows, tilapia.
I can't even speak. We got to experience something really awesome last night.
It was a fun show.
Really listeners about it? You want to tell them about it?
It was the Zurich Magic Theater up in St. Pete. Two great musicians and magicians who have come back here from Guam. Spent about 17 years in Guam. They were fabulous. I had a great show. We actually appeared on stage a little bit. Maybe we'll show some clips later. But fun evening, guy. Just a great show. Recommend it very highly for family entertainment up in St. Pete.
It was awesome. It was totally, I thought it'd be good. I didn't think it would be that good. I don't know why. I was like, oh, St. Pete, whatever. And then that sounds horrible. But I didn't know
we'll edit that later.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know how great it would be. It was fantastic. And apparently they changed the show up. So we could go back again and see different tricks. So we could do that. It was super fun and I highly recommend them. And I hope that we'll have them as guests maybe in the future.
Well, I went on YouTube this morning and found out how they did some of the tricks. And I was so sad that I went on YouTube because you want to know the mystery. You want to have the mystery. You don't want to know how this is happening. Just immerse yourself.
But why? Why can't you just enjoy? Or maybe that's kind of like, you know, part of the story as well too, is that you want, like, why we're doing this is that we want to know the story behind the story. So maybe that's why you did it. It just
Listen,
naturally.
had fun, had a great evening. So we kicked off your next year on the spinning planet.
I love it. I keep thinking about it, and I've been watching those YouTube videos as well too.
Excellent.
Well, that's just the cool thing is that magic, it entertains every age. You know, we were there from 8 all the way up to, 88. Just kidding. But there was a mixed
I'm
audience.
not 88.
I know. It was a mixed audience, and that is the thing, is that it was a great family, unique activity. We got to all do it together. We were all entertained, and it
No,
was
it's great.
so I'm just grateful that I get to do that with you.
Enough about us. What's happening today?
Yeah, so super excited. We have a really cool guest today, as always. I love all of our.
Hold on. Is her name Kristy?
How did you do that?
A little fish told me.
Yes, and she is fascinating. So Kristy juggles a couple different things, and she's going to share with us her story.
She
I met
works in the
Kristy.
circus?
Exactly. Well, she might say it's a circus. I met her, across my paths doing leadership coaching and training, and met her. And I don't want to tell too much of her story. We'll let her tell it. But it just shows you how, like, when you see somebody, like, the capacity that people can handle and what they can do, and then also help others. And she is just such an incredible giver and helper. And I'm excited for you to meet her. So are we ready to bring Kristy on, Dad?
Let's hear her story.
Oh, let's do it. All right. Well, we are so grateful and excited to have Kristy Reber as our guest. Welcome, Kristy, to the
Hey,
Wonderful
Kristy.
Story podcast.
Hello.
We are so happy to have you here. Dad, do you want to start it off?
Kristy, I have one question to start with you.
Sure.
What's your story?
What's my story? Well, it's been several stories combined into one that has gotten me to the place that I am today.
It's a series then, apparently, eh?
Yeah, I have so many stories. They all bring me to where I am today. Lots of stories. I have a huge family, so I come from a very giant family. I have 7 sisters. A couple different marriages in there, but you learn a lot when you grow up in a household with 5 girls. You learn coping skills. So number 1 is coping skills will teach you for the rest of my story. That will take you far in life. So I am married almost 25 years in November.
Congratulations.
Celebrating 25 years. And we have 2 daughters. They are 20 and 17, my girls. Very proud of them. They are hard workers. They're a lot like me, very dedicated, very focused. They are my right-hand men between the 2 of them at this moment. My first career, I have a degree in business. So I spent about 15 years in market research for some medical device companies. And, as careers sometimes can take us down those paths, you never know where it's going to go. I was doing pretty well, had my girls, didn't have so much flexibility, wanted a little bit more. So I had started to work on my own for myself, made my own hours. It was wonderful. And then one fateful, horrible day, we had a very traumatic house fire, and the house didn't totally crumble to the ground, but it was a total loss.
You were in it at the time?
Yes, I was still working.
No, you're in the house?
For myself, but what was that?
You're in the house while it was on fire?
No, that's part of the story. So we were not in the house when it caught fire. It was a faulty power strip behind a fish tank that we had in our kitchen. And crazy enough, I had smelled something earlier in the week, and I went everywhere. My first place I went was behind this fish tank. I was like, okay, what is going to go wrong? This is going to be the fish tank, right? And so I had been smelling back there at the electricity. Nothing was hot. Nothing was burning. Nothing was out of the ordinary. And my youngest daughter, who was only 2 at the moment, had broken a lamp in my bedroom, and it smelled really bad up there. So I thought, oh, it's the lamp. I threw the lamp in the trash and moved on. Didn't think much else of it. So that happened to be the week of Halloween. So on Halloween night, I went to my best friend's house. She lived about 2 hours away. So me and the girls pack it up. They were in a townhouse neighborhood. It's lots of trick-or-treating.
With your husband, without your husband?
Without my husband. So my husband worked night shift at the moment. He was a police officer. So we went to visit her. We were in Pennsylvania at the moment. She lived in Maryland. So we took off, went to visit her. And it was like one of those chaotic days when I had to get out of the house. I was taking my husband's truck because I was going to bring her treadmill back to my house with me. So
Sure.
I almost backed through the garage door when I left because I wasn't used to leaving on that side of the garage. It's like we ran back in the house several times. We forgot the dress for the trick-or-treating, and I had cupcakes and they were half iced and half not. It was like crazy chaos getting out of the house. But I can remember that whole day, and so we go down to Maryland. We're with my friend. We had a wonderful evening, couple of cocktails. We're trick-or-treating in our neighborhood. We all go up to bed, and me and the girls would stay in one room, and then her son would go sleep in with them. So me and the girls were asleep, and I was laying there, and like out of a dead sleep, I woke up because I realized I didn't have my phone with me, which is very odd. So I went back downstairs in her house, grabbed my phone, went back upstairs to bed, and then I woke up. It was probably like 5 a.m, maybe 5:30. My phone's ringing, and I saw my husband's name on it, and I pick up the phone. I'm like, hey. And his first thing that he said to me was, our house is on fire. I was like,
Oh, crap.
I said, what are you talking about? He goes, the house is on fire, and my kids were sleeping in the room. So I got
Sure.
up and went out of the bedroom and was in the hallway. And all I kept saying was, the house is on fire. And she heard me, and she thought I was talking about her house because I'm in their house, right?
Sure.
So my husband happened to be a police officer, and as police officers get all the scanning over the radios, he was the first one to respond to the house fire. So before any of the fire trucks, because he knew the way that
Oh, he was at work when he heard this.
He was at work when he heard
I got you.
her to
Okay.
go over the scanner.
Sure.
He goes with his night shift partner. They
Ugh.
tried to go in the front door. Thank God nothing happened to him, but one of my dogs was behind the front door, so they couldn't get the door open right away. Otherwise, he probably would have been blown clear across the yard. But yeah, he was the first responder to his own house fire, which was not very good.
And you lost everything?
Yeah, it was basically, I mean, it didn't burn completely to the ground, but from the smoke and water damage, we couldn't
Ugh.
salvage some minor things and some weird things. You look around the room and you're like, huh, what is that? A lot of our photos were melted, like
Sure.
stuck into the glass. We did get to save some of them, but we had this wooden replica of our church that was on a mantle in our living room, and the whole living room ceiling caved in. Like everything in the living room was just covered in soot and rumble. And we saved this little wooden replica of our church. So we still have that. It was clean. It wasn't even like damaged. It was the craziest
Divine
thing.
intervention.
Divine intervention. That, and the other thing, and I still have this to this day, my grandmother had given me a small little bottle of holy water because we were raised Catholic, and she was very much into the whole faith. And here's your holy water. If you need it, you baptize somebody with it, right? So she had given me this small little vial, this little glass, I don't know, it's about the size of a Christmas ornament. She gave that to me, and I actually still have it, and not 1 ounce of water is out of that holy water. And that was in my bedroom, which was on the second floor where all the heat was and all the water, like everything was soaked up there.
She should have sent more.
I know, right? So yeah, so I still have my grandmother's holy water, and I still have that replica of the church. Those were two things that kind of stood out, like, wow, what do you go through this big tragic incident. But, as I was sitting in my friend's house, now I'm thinking I have to get home 2 hours, right? What am I going to do? I had all the police agencies ready to escort me from the Maryland line. They were like, the brotherhood of the place was amazing.
Sure.
They were so kind to us. But I got home, I took my kids to my mother-in-law so that they didn't have to see what I was going to see.
They were would they have been 2 and 5 or 2 and 6?
Yep, 2 and 5. Yep. And so I went over to the house, and it was just like, you walk in and you can't take anything out of your house. And some of it was still sitting exactly as it was. And it was kind of weird. The way the fish tank was right next to a table, none of the linen on my table had burned. None of my curtains burned. I had a bag of crayons on the table. They never melted. But they think what happened is the fire started behind a wooden case that was underneath the fish tank. And so when the wood burned enough, it broke, and the fish tank extinguished what was happening inside the house. But the fire had gotten in the wall and went up the wall and into the ceiling and then spread.
Did the roof collapse at all?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh,
Our whole ceiling and the whole second floor roof basically collapsed. And my youngest daughter's bedroom would have been right over the kitchen where the ceiling gave way first. So, and her bed was covered in ceiling debris. And you sit there and you think to yourself, oh, like first I was like upset. I'm like, and he's a police officer, so we didn't know about the fish tank. So my first thought was, who burned my house down, right? I don't know who made angry. That was my first response, was somebody just burned my house down. Thank God it wasn't. It was a fish tank. But I sat there and I was with my friend, you're crying and the kids are asking questions. And I just kept saying, I can't believe we weren't home. I would have pulled my kids out of a burning house.
Wow.
Yeah.
right? I would have been alone because he would have been at work, and I would have pulled my kids out of this burning house, and you just start to like think
Yeah.
differently about
Oh,
life.
sure. Could have
Think
been a
about
lot worse. Sure.
blessing. That's exactly what I said. It could have been completely worse. My kids could have been completely traumatized. I would have been traumatized by that.
It was still one big, bad, horrible, terrible, disgusting, fearful day.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But
And I'm sure even like the aftermath, like,
oh yeah.
you know, like having to, so what it, I did not know that part of your story.
You
I
know,
did not know that, like that.
this is why I told you it's
Jamie, I
layers.
thought you were acting.
It's
Yeah,
layers.
no, I really was like,
No, there's
wow.
layers.
So how
There's
do you
layers.
like bounce? I mean, like, how do you
So
come back from that?
yeah, well, lots of friends and lots of help and a strong relationship between me and my husband. So you have a certain amount of time, like insurance helped and we were covered. Like we didn't financially have any loss from it because we were well insured. So thank God for insurance, right? And my in-laws were very, very helpful for us and lots of friends that helped just with Kelly because she was so little. I couldn't do everything I needed to do when she was around. So I would send her to friends a lot. And my older daughter happened to be in kindergarten. And I think she took it the worst because she knew a little bit more.
Sure.
And, you know, things like fire safety day would come at school. And so she would come home crying, or they'd call me and they'd say, do you want her to go in the smokehouse? I'm like, no, don't send her in the smokehouse. Please don't send her in the smokehouse. Like that won't end well. So we had some ups and downs with that. But I think the biggest thing that kind of happened after that was I sat down and thought to myself, what am I doing? Right? What am I doing with life? All these people helped me. I mean, you wouldn't even believe the agencies that responded. I think we had 6 or 7 different fire companies locally that all responded to our fire. We had emergency vet services, which I didn't even know existed. They come with their own private vans and transport your animals to an emergency vet. So we did lose one of the dogs was behind the front door and she had carbon monoxide poisoning. So we did lose one of our dogs, but my other dog and my cat went into we had a finished basement, which was below where the fire was burning. And so they went down there and they found them, like when the firefighters went in, they found my animals. And so they were kind of just running around, but my dog and my cat actually had to go to the emergency room for a bit too. But these people come and they transport your animals and they charge you nothing. Like
So
they
this
took
was
my
not in
animals.
Florida, apparently.
No, this was in Pennsylvania.
I
Yeah.
got you.
And so they drove my dog and my cat to an emergency animal vet an hour from the house. And like, they just were so kind. And like, they sent me cards afterwards saying, I'm sorry about the loss of your animal. And
Amazing.
look at all of this, like all of these people that helped us. And I just sat there and I thought, what am I doing to help the world? Like, am I doing anything to help the world in my job? And so I started to think about it and I was like, you know what?
Need a change.
I needed a change. I said, I knew this was going to be a far-fetched. I look at my husband one day, I said, guess what? I'm going to nursing school. He's like, okay, let's do it. So I, as soon as Kelly went to kindergarten, I had started working on my prerequisites. And then when she went to kindergarten, I knew it was a better time to be able to do that. So I applied to a very competitive program with Penn State and I was accepted and it was an accelerated degree. So it was 16 months start to finish. And I mean, I had so much support from my husband, from the kids.
Were
And
you working at the time or for the school full
no,
time?
I couldn't work full time and do that. It was, there was no way I could have been
It's a
able to
big
do that.
gamble, sure.
Yeah. And it was an hour away from our house. So like,
Oof.
I had a nice commute every day and all of my clinicals were in that direction. And
But you were determined.
I was determined. Yeah, I was determined. So, you know, with every good thing that comes, I always look, I'm like, oh gosh, where are we going with this next? So my first semester of nursing school, now I had been out of college for 15 years at this point. So it was very
Oh, it's
different
hard.
when
Oh,
I
sure.
went back to college the second time than it was the first time. There's no paper notebooks. There's no, like, we still had chalkboards and, you know, whiteboards in the room when I went to college the first time.
Yeah,
Everything's
same.
on a computer and they put PowerPoint up. I'm like, what? This is so strange for me. It was very different. So I'm trying to like acclimate a little bit and my
Sure.
prereqs had helped me with that. But my very first semester with nursing school, it was a bit of an eye opener because it's nursing school is very different than business school. The questions are different. The way you have to study is different. The interaction is different. It just was completely different for me. So I had on this one fateful day had failed my first test and I was devastated because I didn't fail tests. I didn't fail tests. It just wasn't me. So I remember
Was it a written test or was it a practical test?
no, it was a written test. It was just a written test. And I think I just wasn't prepared with how I had to study for the types of questions
Sure.
that they had asked. And it was my health assessment class of all things. I'm like, I have to be able to assess my patients. So I had failed this class, and there were some things going on with the state police, and I don't know how much makes national headlines everywhere else, but there was a person that went a little off his rocker and decided to sit outside of one of the state police barracks in Pennsylvania and had a sniper rifle and shot
Eesh.
two troopers walking into their building.
What year was that?
2014. Yep, 2014. It was
I
in
think you get more national coverage today than we did back then.
yeah, it was September of 2014. And it went crazy. And of course, it goes right away to all the state police barracks. Everybody went into kind of not lockdown, but like extra protect mode.
Sure.
Yeah.
There are extra people there. They're walking around in all of their gear. Like
Was your husband a statey?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
So he calls, and this had happened a couple days before I failed the test. So he calls me on this day that I failed the test. He didn't know I failed the test. And he says to me, "Oh yeah, by the way, I'm going up for the manhunt." I said, "Excuse me, what?" I said, "I thought it was voluntary." He said, "It is voluntary." I said, "You volunteered to
Oof.
go sit in the woods to look for a known sniper that killed two people. Well, it killed one and the other one was
Oof.
pretty well injured."
Gosh, I can't
I
even.
almost drove off the road. I almost drove off the road because here I am trying to manage life, my two kids, my new nursing career. I failed my test. I was so mad about. And then he calls and tells me that he volunteered to do this. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, I have to quit. I can't do this. I thought I was going to quit. So I went home. I did a lot of soul searching. And I said, you know what? If that's what's important to you, and then it is important to me too. And it is definitely a brotherhood. They were all banded together. Like,
Wow.
I don't know if you know many state police officers, but
Know a few.
they are just amazing together, the way that these men look out for one another. And that's what he had with his guys that he worked with. And so it was a small crew, some from every barracks, all from
Sure.
the state went, and they even had other states were responding. But
Please
him
tell
and
me they got the bastard.
months later.
How come I get the feeling this story does not end well?
Oh, no, it's okay. He's
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, no, he's
taken
good.
care of.
They
That
got him
man's taken
months
care of.
later. They got him.
They got him. He was out there a few months, yeah, because they didn't, and it wasn't. They kind of scaled it back after a while because they had narrowed it down to a section. But
Sure.
here, the one day, so my husband was up there for 4 straight days, and they just were like, we would work and sleep and work and sleep and work and sleep. So I was home with my kids, not really being able to communicate with him, like
Not being able to
struggling
sleep either.
emotionally,
Oh,
because
sure.
now my best friend and my other half is in the woods looking for a sniper who killed people. And I have these 2 girls at home, and they knew. And my one that was in school, everybody knew her daddy was a police officer, so they weren't always kind. And then they're talking, and then she
Sure.
goes home and she's crying. And, and my in-laws, we lived a couple miles from them. They're obviously worried that's their son, right?
Yeah.
His brother was like, it just was a lie. It was so emotional, but it just, again,
It takes a toll
right,
on you. Like
it
that
takes a
stress,
toll on you.
and that takes a massive toll on your body. Yeah.
And so here's where you start to look at those coping skills and how do you get through this and what do you do every day? So you look at the positive. He's up there helping his brotherhood. He's trying to stop this man from ever hurting anybody else. And that's kind of how I had to look at it. I was looking at it like they all have each other's backs and he will be protected.
Wow.
And he did. He went up there for a couple of days, and then I think he went back up there a second time later on. But in the end, they did get that guy. He has his penalty for what he did.
Good.
He made it out of there alive?
He did.
Too bad.
Because they all had body cameras on when they found him.
Oh,
So
geez.
it is what it is. But at that moment and going through nursing school and doing all of that, you learn a lot of resilience with that. And you look at the things and your end goal, like, what is my end goal? Do I want to succeed? Do I want to be a nurse? Do I want to keep
Sure.
going? And it was a yes. It was all a yes. And I used my village of people to support me. My in-laws were with me almost 24/7 while he was gone, helping with my girls. And, you can't ever underestimate how much your village helps you to raise your children. And it was amazing. So
Amazing.
that was that one moment in time. And we did have some fun. So, as things go, usually you're financially compensated for these things. So they were paid for the whole time that they were gone up there for 4 days. So he got straight pay for 4 days. And so when he came home, he said, "Hey, what do you want to do fun for the kids?" So at Christmas time, we we made them a little scavenger hunt, and we took them to swim with the dolphins in Discovery Cove
That's
in
great.
Orlando. Oh my God, they loved it. And we told them, like, you know, Daddy worked really hard, and we know that this was hard for you guys, and you supported Mommy in nursing school, and I'm going to take my little 4-week break, and we're going to go down to Orlando. And we left Christmas night. So we packed it all up and we said, come on, we're leaving. They had no idea we were going. So we did something like, we tried to make it a little bit fun for them and make it memorable for them, and for them to understand that we know that you sacrificed so that Daddy could do that, and so that I could do what I was doing. And we want you to feel like we value that. And so let's go do something fun as a family.
I love that.
Yeah. And so they'll talk about it to this day. Like, my girls always remember that trip to SeaWorld, and they still remember the scavenger hunt. I think I even have some of the letters that we did with them, and they loved it. So it was
Jamie,
really—
can we start a Mother of the Year award?
I think so.
Oh, wait a minute. I got some real doozies for Mom of the Year. My girls are teens now, remember.
Folks, this may be a multi-part series on Kristy.
Yeah, I know. Like, that's not like, yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so cool.
Well, that was the early part of my nursing career. So, you know, and you raise the kids, you do the best you can with them, and there's ups and downs all over the place. And, you know, you have things that you second guess yourself, like,
Sure.
You know, when do you tell them about realities of the world, and, you know, when you tell them about things that they should know about, and when do you think, oh, maybe I shouldn't have told them that. And I've had those.
It's the story of my life every day with my 8-year-old.
I've told you everything. Jeez.
Not with you and me.
Oh.
I still don't want you to tell me the reality of the world.
If you haven't figured them out by now, it may be a little too late.
Sorry, Kristy, back to you.
No, that's fine. You know, the thing about being a child of a state trooper is you get a lot of realities of the world that you don't want to know about, but they get to hear all of it, because if you're not honest with your kids, they're going to try and investigate on their own.
Sure.
That's the worst thing ever.
Oh, Cousin It is back.
On their own. And so, you know, when death happened, we told them about death. When we knew that there was things happening with drug addiction, we told them about that, because we didn't want them to ever wonder and not be able to ask us questions. And so I think that nice open relationship that we have with them from both of us has helped my girls now for where they are and where they've had to take me and my husband and the rest of our life. So let's see. So that was kind of those traumatic things that happened. The rest of our life kind of went for a while. And then
when you were in Orlando at Discovery Cove, did you ever say, we could wind up in Florida someday?
Actually, we always said that. So my best friend, who I was with on Halloween night, oh my gosh, we have a bad track record together. Actually, I forgot one little fun fact. Her son is 2 weeks older than my youngest daughter. So while we were in that rental house, building our house, we had gone down for his birthday party in Maryland again. So we were there when the fire happened. We'd gone back in March for his birthday party. And my poor child, we were in a bounce house. I was like, come on, let's go. And I pushed her down the bounce house slide. Well, she went cockeyed and came with her arm against the side of the bounce house and broke her arm. I know.
And that was before you got into nursing, so you couldn't even help her.
Yeah. I knew something was wrong, because it looked like
public services
had moved.
Who called public service on?
Yeah, really. No.
My husband's like, you're not going there anymore. No more visiting me.
The bounce houses are like the worst. I mean, you should know that they are like the worst thing for children, bounce houses, but those are trampolines. But
yeah. So you know, we bad track record, but so we still continue to go down there and visit with her. She had decided a couple years later that they were going to move their whole family to Florida. So they took the plunge, and she's a nurse as well. She found a job. Her husband got transferred with his company. So they left us all the way from Maryland to Florida. I was like devastated. So basically every year since they left, we had to come down to Florida for a visit to see them. And also my husband was a Dolphins fan at the time, but we'll forgive him for that, because we'll talk later about football. But we would come down and usually combine it with something fun, go to Disney and see them, or, you know, see them and go to a football game or something. So we still kind of, that is how my connection got to Florida, because they moved, and then eventually we decided we were going to move.
Did they move to this area?
Yep. She's in Bradenton. They live 6 miles from my house. It's about 8-minute ride to get there.
Do you work?
You were a full-fledged nurse at that point.
Yes, I was a full-fledged nurse at that point. We don't work together. She works up at Tampa General. Yeah. She's she's very smart and has been in nursing much longer than I have been. She's got her master's and she's got a really great job. She does an awesome job.
But I wonder if that influenced you to like get like the idea of nursing school.
100% it did.
Yeah, got it. Because there's
100%
that
it
great
did.
connection there. Yeah. Otherwise, it was
So
just like
yeah,
out of the blue. It was like my best friend does this. And so,
She
yeah.
was my biggest supporter with all of it. She
Yeah.
was absolutely my biggest supporter with all of it. I called her one day and I said, oh, I got a crazy idea. I want to be a nurse. She's like, do it. You should do it.
I love
so your
it.
husband left the state police to come down to Florida?
Well, yes, not because he necessarily wanted to. So, fast forward a couple of years, in 2018, we noticed this right after Memorial Day. We had been at some friend's house for Memorial Day get together. And that Monday he comes to me, he's like, my vision feels funny. I was like, what do you mean your vision feels funny? I don't know. Everything's blurry. And I thought, cause there was like a campfire. I'm like, did you fall and hit your head? You have like soot in your eye. Like I was
Sure.
thinking blurry vision, right? So he's like, no, and he goes, oh, I'm fine. I'm just going to shake it off. I said, okay, whatever. So then like 2 or 3 days later, he comes back and he's like, something's really not right. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, the letters and the numbers on a page are jumping around at me.
Oh boy.
Oh my God, dude, like that's not like something's bad. Something is
Sure.
bad. We have to go to the doctors. So he had gotten, where did we go first? I think first we went to our primary care. He called the primary care, but he was telling them blurry vision too. So they sent him to an ophthalmologist.
Oh boy.
I'd gone with him to this ophthalmologist. They dilate his eyes. They want to look at everything. And he got up to leave that session and he was so dizzy he couldn't even walk because of the way like it just set his balance off from whatever they did. So I was like, this is really bad. So we went to the primary doctor then the next day, told him about everything that happened. He had failed his like field of vision test, or I don't even know what it was,
Sure.
but they knew something wasn't right. So he did all these like in-office tests. They almost looked like field sobriety tests with him, symmetry tests and things like that. And I hadn't noticed any symmetry issues with him at all. So they said to him, we think you have inner ear vestibular disease. I was like, okay, what's that mean? Oh, it's just something with the inner ear. We can manage through it. I was like, okay, no problem. And I kept saying, I was like, but would that really cause letters and numbers to jump around on a screen?
No.
I don't understand how that's matching up. And I just kept saying, something doesn't feel quite right. He was only 42. I said, something's not right. Something is not right. And my doc, I'll never forget this. My doc looked at me and he said, goes, Kristy, I'm going to trust your gut because I do trust you. He said, but I don't want to be that crazy primary care doc that starts ordering all these tests for the sake of ordering.
Neurologist. Sure.
But he goes, I want you to be able to sleep at night. And he goes, and I do trust your gut. He said, I'm going to send him up for a CAT scan. I think they sent him up for a CAT scan for the next day. So we had gone up the next day for the CAT scan. He goes in, he comes back out, and he's just sitting there looking at me. He's like, something's not good. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, they told me I have to wait out in the waiting room. I'm like, oh, Lord, help us. So I'm waiting, and it was like a little ancillary, CAT scan place. So we're waiting, and I'm thinking the radiologist is going to come out and talk to me. Somebody's going to come talk to me. So we're asking, and we must have been there an hour and a half waiting in the waiting room. Nobody had come out. Now I'm like mad. So the next thing I know, my cell phone rings and it's the primary care doctor. And he says, all right, he said, you have to get yourself to a nearest emergency room. You have a subacute hematoma on your brain.
Mm.
Oh my God, why are we bleeding in the brain? Like, what is going on? So we went to a hospital. Was probably about an hour from our house, but it was the one that was affiliated with the place where we had the study done, so that hopefully they could just transfer the images over and everything will be lined up. I said, can you call them and tell them that we're coming? Like, I'm not going to call an ambulance for this because he's been like this for 4 days now, but I'll get him there as quickly as I can.
Sure.
So my girls happened to have been at school. It was their last day of school. My daughter will tell you to this day that she hates June 4th because it's the day that the other daughter broke her arm as a gymnast. And then this happened to be also June 4th that we had to call them and tell them, I'm sorry, I have to take daddy to the hospital. So you're going to my mom and pop's tonight. So they kind of went about their day and we tried to minimize disruptions as much as possible. So when you show up into an emergency room and you say, we just had a scan and my husband has a bleed in his brain, they move faster than you will ever see anybody else move, other than if you're actually having like an active heart attack. They stroke alerted him, they like rushed him to the back. They're doing all this stuff. And so when the neurologist, it was a NP from the neurology unit, had come down and he was doing all these tests with him, he's like, now watch his mouth. And I started to focus on the things that he was telling me to focus on. And then I clearly saw it. I was like, how did I miss he was stroking? So I completely missed it because I wasn't even looking for it. To me, he was telling me he had blurry vision. I wasn't thinking that he had like a bleed and a stroke. So he was in the hospital for a couple of days. So then they come back and they tell us, I'm thinking, okay, we'll coil this, we'll clip it, we'll do something, like get in there through an artery for something.
Sure.
Just
Like
get
your
rid of it.
medical like terminology, like coming out being like, I know, yeah.
The whole time we're driving there, I'm thinking, I've got this man. Is he going to die in the car next to me? I don't really know. All I heard was brain bleed, right? And now I'm trying to explain it to his parents, and his parents are like not medical at all. His dad is like a mess over it. So I kept telling him, I was like, it's going to be fine. They can coil this, they can clip this. No worries, right? So we go to the hospital. He's like, well, actually, none of this is things that we can do anything about because it's right outside of his brainstem.
Oh,
So
Jesus.
yeah. So what he has is called a cavernous malformation. And it is a malformed vessel. So very
It was
basic.
congenital.
Yes. Well, they can be. His is not, they say. They say it is not. They say if it's congenital, you would have more than one, and they would have been symptomatic at a very much younger age. So they can be sporadic too. And they think because he had hypertension for years, which we thought was controlled, but wasn't actually controlled. This vessel just got weak when it
Sure.
formed,
It
and
popped.
it looks like it didn't actually pop. So it's like a raspberry. So it's like a clustered vessel like this, and it has nooks and crannies and weak walls because of the way that it was formed. And so one of the walls just opened a little, and they say
It
it
leaked.
oozes. Yes, they say
Oh,
it leaks. So it's very slow flow, but this is the prognosis. Basically, here you go. He has this bleeding vessel in his head. Maybe it'll stop, maybe it won't, but it's too deep to operate on. So go about your business and call us if you have any more problems.
oh man.
I was like,
Ugh.
oh my God. So you take a man who doesn't like to sit still on a regular basis, and now he has to be on desk duty. And well, first he was off duty for a while. They wouldn't even let him work. And then when he was released, he was probably off for 8 weeks, driving us all crazy. They put him back to limited duty, which for a state police officer is like crippling. They can't
Sure.
carry their gun. They can't respond to any emergencies. He could sit on the desk and answer the phone. He can file. He can take care of the cars.
How are his symptoms during that period?
Um, they waxed and waned. Some days it looked like he was completely back to normal, and then something would set him off, and he'd have like another, I'd call it a hypertensive crisis, because he's a very emotional man, as
Sure.
most state policemen are. He's a very emotional man, but does not like to talk about his emotions at all, ever. I don't have emotions. I'm a man.
Yeah.
And so little things would set him off, and I could tell when he was symptomatic because he'd get like a little droopy to me.
Sure.
The next time that we noticed that he had a problem with it, we had gone to Florida on vacation. We'd gone out to Anna Maria Island. We rented a minivan, took the girls, and each of them had a friend, and we got a really nice house down there. We were there for a week. It was beautiful. We had a wonderful vacation. He insisted he had to drive home. I'm like, I don't know about this. Well, I think the traffic was a little too much. Plus, he was anticipating going back to work. And when we got home that day and we were unpacking the car, I started noticing his leg was dragging a little and he wasn't using his right arm again. I'm like, and I talked to him and the right side of his face is drooping. I'm like, oh God. So I thought it was active, like it was bleeding again.
Sure.
So we took him back to the emergency room. They stroke alert him again, back to the neuro floor, do the whole cycle again. They're like, well, it's not actively bleeding. They do serial CAT scans with this so they can look and make sure in 6 hours that it's not any
Sure.
different or that no bleed has gone outside of the cavernoma. So we had done that those 2 times. And then I said, we need to go see another specialist. Like I would like to get a second opinion.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
Should we take this thing out? Should we not take this out? So I had an uncle that worked at Jefferson. He was an emergency medicine doctor. And so I called him up. I'm like, can you help me? Who is your best neurosurgeon that you have in your hospital? And he said, I got someone for you. So he sent him a message, and it was the chief of their neurosurgery department, who normally doesn't even see patients except for very extreme cases.
Sure.
And he agreed to see my husband. So we had gone down there, met with this man, and he was brilliant, but very blunt. And so we sat there. He did a few tests with Eric, and he looked at him. He said, what do you do again? Eric said, I'm a state police officer. He said, okay, well, guess what? You're never going to be able to carry a gun again.
Wow.
And I went, oh God, this isn't going to end well.
Wow.
So because his right hand wasn't stable enough, and they were just concerned that he wouldn't have control to be able to shoot a gun.
Sure.
So he
He's
said,
what, like at this time, like 43, 44?
he was 42.
Or 42 at the time. 40, oh, so 40,
He was
okay,
42, and he had just finished his 19th year in the state police. So we were, by the time we saw this guy at Jefferson, I think he had hit 20. And so with the state, when you have pension and retirement and things like that, there's a certain amount you get at 20 years. And then if you stay till 25, which is their typical retirement, you get more.
Yeah.
So we looked at this and we both went, all right, what do we want to do? Do you want to sit on the desk for 5 years? Like, are you going to be okay
You
answering?
slow death.
Never carrying a gun, never going on calls, watching your friends go on raids, on rescues, on this, on that, and you're never going to be able to do it. You will only be able to answer the phone and check the cars. That's all he would have been able to do. So he looked at me and he said, I don't want to live that life either. So I want to retire. I said, all right, if you're retiring, you want to stay here? So we lived in the community where he grew up. Everybody knew him. Both of my in-laws were teachers in that community. So everybody knew the family. Everybody knew the family. You couldn't go anywhere without somebody knowing him or his parents, everywhere. And I wasn't Kristy, I was Eric's wife. And then I became Caitlin and Kelly's mom. Like, I actually never had my own identity. I tell them all the time. I was like, I went from being Eric's wife to Caitlin's mom to Kelly's mom.
Yeah.
So we talked about it and we both knew we wanted to come to Florida. It was a very difficult decision. It was a very difficult decision because
You're leaving your village that like got you through so much.
Only going to be the 4 of us. And we knew probably no one's coming to visit us. It's a really far way. None of our family really like the heat.
They all come to Florida. Are you kidding?
We haven't yet gotten one to come, like they visit, but they leave, which is still okay, you know. But yeah, so we decided we were gonna take the plunge and we're gonna do it. I was able to get a job here at SMH, which I love, and everything worked out. And so when he first started looking at to get a job, we knew no more guns, no more fast paced, none of that stuff, right? So now what are you gonna do?
Did that last doctor have any other opinions of any repair? Could he go in anything different than you heard from the first doctor?
He said no. He said first he said you can't ever carry a gun again. That's basically all we heard, right? And then he said I cut people's brains open for a living. It's what I do. I'm a neurosurgeon. He said
that's kind of blunt, yeah.
Cut into your brain. That's what he said. I don't want to cut into your brain. So the problem is where this is at, all of your nerve fibers, they kind of look
in
like
the stem, sure.
And they go down in through your brainstem. And so where all of these fibers come like into a ribbon and go down through the brainstem, his cavernoma is right there. And so if they would have gone in to try and reach it, there was no clear path to reach it because it didn't bleed out to his skull. It stayed in itself. If it would have created its own pathway out, like towards the edge of his brain,
could have worked on it, sure.
Done it. They would have found a pathway and they could have done it. But without that, there's no way to know which nerve you might damage. It could have made him blind. It could
absolutely
have
could be worse.
Reasoning. It could have made him not have any
worth the risk.
Right. It was not worth the risk. And that was 2 neurosurgeons that we spoke with that said don't cut into his brain. So we said, okay. So we decided we're gonna move. I have a great job. The girls are all on board with this. They're like, yes, we want to live at the beach. Yes, we'll go to new schools. Like they were completely embracing with all of it. And it was amazing. And I think it's just because we have such a close bond, the 4 of us, that they were like, yes, let's do this. So we moved to Florida and we moved in June of 2019. So 6 months later,
COVID.
So here we are, 4 of us all by ourselves.
Isolated.
My best friend's there, but we're all trying to be respectful of each other. And
yeah, especially because she's working in a hospital, you don't want you definitely don't.
And I was in this hospital too, so I knew what we were doing here. So when we first moved, my husband had one of his dream jobs. He started working with the Phillies in Clearwater. He was he was like a driver for all the new recruits that would come down because everybody brand new started in Clearwater. And so all these new recruits would come and he would drive them to their hotels, drive them to dinner,
Loved it. Oh,
he was okay to drive. Like he's allowed with this
at that point, he was still able to drive. So, because he still had all of his vision was intact. It was just those times when the cavernoma got a little funky that he couldn't see right, but all of his vision was still intact at that point. So he had this fun little job that he was doing, and we had some visitors, and we had like tickets to go to a game, like a preseason, their training camp games and stuff like that. And then COVID shut everything down. And I was most mad because the Phillies have a ball at the end of their training camp. And cancel the ball. And I was so mad. I'm like, all I wanted to do was go to the ball. Is that wrong?
Fell of the ball.
I wanted to go to the ball. So we missed all that kind of fun. And because of COVID, they didn't need him anymore because they weren't really doing anything. And so he was kind of like laid off for a while. And then he had seen another job while he was off on doing nothing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And it was a security position. His title's called a security ambassador. But really what they were hiring for was somebody to be at their entrance where all the players come in so that he could monitor the COVID protocols, because the NFL put through these really, really strict protocols that everybody had to have temperature screens. You had to fill out a healthcare screening every day. They had to have their masks. Like they even had these like tracking badges. So they needed somebody to like keep track of all the badges
Sure.
out and like all this crazy stuff. So they hired another position to be able to do that. So at first he was just like seasonal. And then when it looked like the season was coming to an end, he went to them and he said, okay, well, like the Phillies are going to start opening up. Do you want me to stay here, or
Sure.
should I go back to the Phillies and come back in the fall? Like, what do you guys really want? And they offered him a full-time job at that point. So it was really good. And the full-time job happened to be about 4 weeks before they went to the Super Bowl. And so,
Wow.
yeah. So he got to be part of the team when it was the Super Bowl team in
Does he get a ring for that?
Yes, he did. So we have a fun Super Bowl. I should have brought the Super Bowl ring with me today. I didn't even think about it.
Oh my gosh,
That's for part two.
awesome.
Part two.
Yeah. So he got a Super Bowl ring, and I got to go to the Super Bowl because it was the year that they had like only 4,000 fans or something ridiculous. It was like a really low number, 10,000 maybe. They gave away a lot of tickets to healthcare workers, and one of our units here at SMH did get them, but I didn't have one from there. So he calls me the one day at work. He said, "Are you going to have to go find a friend to go to the Super Bowl with?" I was like, "Oh,
That's so cool."
So,
You were your
yeah,
best
so-
friend?
Well, I thought she was going to get a ticket because Tampa General got a whole
Oh,
bunch
yeah.
of tickets with them. So in the meantime, I had asked, his cousin is also a nurse, and she was in
Oh,
Pennsylvania, and
oh,
she's a
nice.
huge football fan. So I invited her to come down. I'm like, Vicky, come down and go to the Super Bowl with me.
That's
So she
so
came, and we had like a
cool.
whole girls' day. It was so much fun. We had so much fun. And then, of course, there's an after party because they won. And so we went to the after party, and it was like surreal. You're looking around and you're like, all these guys are like hanging out, and like this is Ludacris was playing. I'm like, I don't even know who Ludacris is, but it was so
It's
fun.
ludicrous, but
It
you
just
didn't know
was
who
so
Ludacris is.
It just was so fun. It was like live in the moment and just be in the moment and like soak it all in and love it for what it's worth. So that was kind of his beginning journey with the Tampa Bay Bucks. And so they've kept him now full time. So that is his job. He works at the players entrance. And so he does like security rounds around the perimeter and pretty much anything else that they need him to do. He does it
Wait,
all.
so here's my question though.
Yes.
Have you met him?
Which one?
Brady.
I didn't see Brady in person, but
Okay.
this is
Sorry,
kinda
I had to
funny.
go there.
Yeah, no. But you know who we did meet and who was an awesome human being? Gronk.
Oh,
He's a
yeah.
character.
Gronk is such a fun guy. He's so kind and so nice.
I
So
love
here,
that.
let me give you a little foray into what Gronk has done for our family. So with all of this, and we come to Florida, but he's still symptomatic of this cavernoma, right? And so we're like, we need to find some way to help him. And so we had seen a neurosurgeon at Tampa General because he had an episode the one day when he was at work, and me and Kelly happened to have been shopping at IKEA in Orlando. And he calls and he's like, something's not right. I'm like, what is going on? I think he was at either like a Monster Jam or something that they were having at the stadium. I don't remember exactly what the event was, but he was there. So I said, all right, just stay put. He said, well, they already called an ambulance, Kristy. I said, please don't get in the ambulance. Like, I know what's wrong with you. Here's what's going to happen if you get in that ambulance. They're going to admit you. They're going to stroke alert you. You're going to go to the ICU for 2 days. And this is everything that's going to happen. Because we had already done this 3 times. Like, let's not do this again.
Yeah.
So the ambulance came, they checked him out, they did his vitals, they checked his blood sugar. He's like, he's okay. And he's refusing to go. I'm like, fine, just leave him sit there. So I went and I picked him up. And then I said, we probably need to have we need to have you seen by somebody else. So he saw a neurosurgeon at TGH first, and we liked him, but I wasn't totally sold on what his treatment plan was. So he had started to talk to a friend that he had who works at the Bucks also, that had a lot of, he's had like 42 surgeries in his life. And so he asked, which neurosurgeon would you recommend? I'm thinking about going to the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville. So he said, absolutely, I have the best surgeon I can tell you about. And so he helped us get coordinated with a doctor out at the a neurosurgeon at the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville. So now we go out there and we see that doc. So he did wind up having a procedure done. He had gamma knife radiation on this thing. And that would have been in 2021. So after everything had kind of settled down, we had this thing radiated because he was still so symptomatic all the time, and he was getting headaches. And it's like anytime he would be around like loud noises or flashes of light
Sure.
or things like that, which happen in a stadium all the time,
Yeah.
he would start to
Fireworks.
have all these symptoms. And so we thought, this isn't like quality of life. Like, what are you going to do? Quit your job and sit at home because you can't be allowed around like loud and all this? So we got hooked up with these folks at the Mayo Clinic, and they did the Gamma knife. And the first 6 months after the Gamma knife were amazing. It was like he never had any issues at all. And we
Mm.
were so hopeful. We were like very optimistic, like, this is it. This is going to take care of all of it. So, oh yeah, back to Gronk really quick. I'll tell you what Gronk did. So after one of his issues where he wasn't allowed to drive for a couple of weeks, so my friend that works at Tampa General said, all right, well, if this is, let us help. So he was either Ubering or he was having some of these guys drop him off at Tampa General, and then she would bring him home for me. So Gronk, like 2 or 3 days a week, would take him and drop him off at the hospital for us.
Wow.
Oh my God, what a nice guy. Like, what a nice guy. He didn't have to do that. And he's like, yep, come on, Eric, get in the car with me. Let's go for a ride. And he would take him, and we got
Love
to meet his
that.
girlfriend, Camille, who is a beautiful soul too. Like, just kind humans, like just very kind humans, fun,
But
kind
you know
humans.
what? Like you obviously, with all the stories you're telling us, it sounds like you're surrounded by the same kind of person that you are as well, too, right? Like with
Yes.
everything that you've been through, from the fire to,
Yep.
the breaking of the arm to, the manhunt to going to nursing school, all. I'm like, you're surrounded by people like that because that's how you are, right?
Oh
So
yeah. Yep.
it's only fitting. I love
I
that.
get a vision of your husband. He's probably a big guy, isn't he?
No, actually, he's not huge. He's bald though. You probably got the bald. You were thinking the bald.
Everybody's bald. Take a look.
I know.
But so then wasn't he, so you had told me that, so then at that point he was like diagnosed where he couldn't drive anymore, and
So that just happened about a year and a half ago. So part of radiation anywhere in the body can be some swelling. And remember what I told you,
Sure.
no one wanted to actually cut into his brain because they didn't know what they were going to disturb from the outside till they got to this cavernoma. So they kind of watched it, and probably about 8 months, but it was probably right around 6 months after the Gamma knife, he'd started to be symptomatic again. We are like, this is crazy. So we took him back to the Mayo Clinic, and they said, okay, well, it's just swelling around the cavernoma. We're going to give you 2 months worth of high dose steroids
To
to
shrink it
try
up.
and control this. So then we went down the whole path of steroids for 2 months,
Ugh.
which was miserable.
Mood swings.
Miserable.
He was your
It was
attitude.
miserable.
Yeah.
He couldn't sleep. He was eating everything in sight. He swelled up so bad. We had to put him on Lasix because you couldn't even like touch his
Oh,
arm, and he was just like squishy like a marshmallow. I felt so bad for him. Like
did they set expectations before they put him on steroids, or didn't even tell you what could happen?
No, they did. Yeah, we knew
Well,
about
she
this.
knows, like you have to know. I mean, I'm sure you've seen, like obviously in
Yeah.
your time, so
Yeah.
you've seen it go
It
through.
also sent his blood pressure through the roof. So we had to then like more than double his blood
Oh,
pressure,
sure.
which I wasn't paying attention to on the backside. Yeah. So some other complications had happened. He got him off the steroids. I didn't watch the blood pressure medicine. He's on, they put him on a higher dose of cholesterol medicine too, because there's a study out there that shows that some of the statins will reduce the size of a cavernous malformation in the head. He couldn't go into the study because he was already on them before he was diagnosed with the malformation. I know, right? So they just said, just as like let's just see if it's going to help for you. So they put him on the max dose that they could of his cholesterol medicine. So I think as a combination between cleaning out the plaque in all of his vessels, and now we had quadrupled almost his blood pressure medicine, he had an episode at our house, and I thought he was having a seizure. It wasn't a seizure. He just passed out because his blood pressure tanked. So
Wow.
what we've noticed with him is anytime he has a little bit of alcohol in his system, even like one beer or one glass of wine, and then you fill up his belly with food, all of his blood shunts basically to his stomach, because his stomach's like, I gotta get rid of all this food, I gotta digest, I gotta do something. And so it usually drops his blood pressure. And so I was not watching his blood pressure medicines, and I should have watched it a little bit closer because he hadn't been back to the primary care doc in that little bit of a time. So yeah, he passed out. We called the ambulance. I made him go to the hospital again because I thought he was having a seizure, and oh my God, it was traumatic. My older sister was at the house. Her whole family was there. My kids had a meltdown. It was very traumatic.
Wow.
But so that was a while back. So fast forward to a year and a half ago. I don't even remember what started it, but he came to me the one day. He said, something else is going on with my vision. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I can't see you where you're standing. I'm like, oh boy. So then he had a little altercation when he was driving to work one day, and he nipped the end of like a construction trailer, and he got himself so worked up over this. I was on the phone with him when he did it, and he got himself off to the side of the road, and then he was slurring and like nothing. He was like gibberish, and I thought he was dying. I'm on the phone with him, like listening to him actively die. I was panicked. I had just dropped my daughter off at school, swung around. It took me like 20 minutes to get to him where he was at because he was on the side of a road, and he like I was barely responsive. So I had no other choice but to call 911. I'm like, I can't just drag you out of a car.
Sure.
Like, I can't even stand you up. So he went to the local community hospital that was in Bradenton, and they worked him up. And that's when I noticed that he didn't have any peripheral vision. I was like, oh boy. So we got hooked up back out to the Mayo Clinic. I took him back out there. They yelled at me the one night because he kind of got symptomatic again, and I just drove him there instead of taking him to the nearest available. I'm like, he could have died. I'm like, he wasn't going to die. I've been through this for 3 years, 4 years now. We're good. So, I get him out there, they stroke alert him, they put him in the neuro ICU, they do all the things that I knew that they were going to do. But they said at that point, they're like, you need to see a neuro-ophthalmologist. So in our follow-up appointment, we went to see a neuro-ophthalmologist, and they did all the visual field study tests with him, and he has zero peripheral vision to the right. So he can see basically straight in front of
Forward.
himself and
Sure.
everything to the left, but he cannot see anything to the right. So if you imagine just looking straight and nothing you could see to the right, sees nothing. So I can stand right on his right side, and he never sees me if I'm not touching him.
So that obviously impacted his, so he wasn't able to drive after that, right? No driving.
Nope,
Has it
no
impacted
driving
his
anymore.
role at Raymond James or at Tampa Stadium?
So no, he's still able to do that because he knows that complex so well that it's kind of like muscle memory for him. He can get around there, and he's very safe in his environment there. He doesn't drive the golf carts anymore because it's a motorized vehicle, and he's afraid to run into somebody.
Sure.
He's not necessarily afraid that he's going to like hurt himself on the golf cart. He just doesn't
It's
want to go
somebody
in
else.
anybody's car or any property of the Bucks or any players. God forbid, he said, what if I ran into Tom Brady with a golf cart, Kristy? I said, then just don't.
I mean, some of us wish to do that because we just want to like bump into him and be like, hey, but I'm just kidding.
We
No, but
saw
yeah,
him every day. He didn't even
yeah.
need to. He saw him every day.
Yeah.
But yeah, so none of that, but he's still safe to be there, and he loves his job, and they are just amazing to him. Like when it
But then
first happened.
I'm sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead. I mean, I think like, and I don't want to like fast forward, but I think what got our conversation going is that like your own job, like you work in the hospital. Tell us a little bit about like your role, because you like it's fascinating to hear about him, and it's incredible. And I want to tie them two together about like what you're doing now for
Yeah.
people, but also what you continue to do for others. So tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about your role now, what you're doing as well too.
So none of us wanted him to quit his job because I don't really know what else he would do. Honestly, I don't know what else he would do. He would have to sit at home and work from home, and that would be like a death sentence to him probably. And so I drive him to Tampa every morning. So I get up at 4:45 or 4, depending if I'm coming straight here or going home after I drop him off. I take him up to work and I drive him home. So it's like an hour in each direction.
Wow.
After how long is your shift that you have?
Usually I'm here 12 hours. Sometimes it's 10. Sometimes I do like 2 8s and 2 12s. I've been trying to change it up a little bit recently to see if I could give myself a little bit more time in the day, because he also has to get home from work. So for the first like year of doing this, my friend was able to get him home, but she's a director. She has so much on her plate, like, and she works crazy hours. And so we weren't able to sync it up anymore with him getting to her, and like she has offsite meetings. And so then we were constantly having to figure something else out. So once my younger daughter started to drive, we got her a nice little fancy car now of her own. First she drove my fancy car, and I took his old car. But we go up there and we pick him up now. So between me and my
Every day.
Yep.
I worked in Tampa for 5 years, and one or two times I had to go back up the second time. It almost killed me.
Yeah, it's not fun. It's not fun. I usually in the mornings I'm on the phone with my friend or my sister. My older sister's up usually really early too, or I'm a big Taylor Swift fan. So I'll just rock out to Taylor Swift or, do whatever
Sure.
I can to kind of entertain myself for the day. And some days I come right in here to work and I just start my day. I'm here by about 8 o'clock, and then I do, my 8 to 8 or whatever my day looks like. And some days if I'm the only clinical coordinator here, I'll go home first, and then I'll come in at 10 so that I'm here for a little bit more night shift because our team still needs our support. So if I'm the only CC here, I will come in a little bit later. And then usually if I go home, I'll, feed the dogs, take the dogs out, do whatever I need to, put a load of dishes in the dishwasher, throw a load of laundry in, or whatever I need to do for that day. I kind of take care of that stuff in the morning, and then I'll come in and then I work till, 10 or 11, sometimes 12. It just depends on what the unit needs for me. And then the next day we get back up and we do the same thing.
And you don't do the Gandhi, you do the Howard Frankenstein bridge, correct?
No, usually I go up 75 because we live in Parish.
I got you. Okay.
So from Parish, I go right on 75, and then
You
just
shoot
depends on
across.
the traffic. I have found I don't like 75 because it gets really boring. I like going over the Skyway because at least it's a pretty drive then.
Sure.
But then you kind of get hung up in Bradenton itself a little bit. So it just depends on the day and kind of what time I'm going through there. And I usually just see which one's shorter.
But Dad, you were going to give her the Mother of the Year award, but I almost feel like she gets the Wife of the Year award as well too.
I was
Wait,
doing
I
a
should tell you
graph
about
of
our
her.
trip to Italy last week. You want to give me
Yeah,
the Wife of the Year award?
I was doing a graph of Kristy's life. It's like this here. It starts out on a very high point.
Yeah.
It's a big valley, high again, low point, but then another low point down here that heads up again. Ah!
And that low point, I hit that low point last year. It was, nobody talks about words to you a lot of times when and even as a healthcare provider, like you don't always think, you can't get the words out of your mouth with what you're feeling, right? And so when this first happened, I was like, we got to move on. We got to keep going. Life is not going to end. We're going to keep going. And so, we did the driving, and then it started to take its toll on me. And, as things escalate here and my job and my responsibility, and, as life just evolves, I found myself one day I was tired and I'm cranky and I'm angry at the world. And I was like, why am I so angry at the world? And I happened to have gone on LinkedIn, of all things. I don't go on LinkedIn that often. And I happened to be on LinkedIn, and I saw a post from a girl that I worked with when I worked at Teleflex. So we're talking back before I had my kids. So 20 years ago almost, right? That I had worked with her, and I'm reading this post and I was confused at it. And I was like, oh my gosh, her husband passed away. And I worked with both of them there. And I'm reading her post and I'm looking further, and the word that jumped out on the screen was grief. And then she went on to just talk about her grief and how she was grieving for her husband and grieving for her children's loss of their father. And I sat there and I just cried to myself, and I was like, oh my God, that's what this is. It's grief. It was grief.
You have to keep it in to survive, just to keep going forward.
Right. You said, and you started off saying that coping was going to be that theme throughout everything.
Oh, yeah.
So what is your advice? Or what are you doing? And what is your advice to others that, my dad just showed you this chart, and for listeners, if you can't see the chart because you're listening and not watching, it's up and down and all around and different, going around. What's helped you? I know you said the word coping, but what are you doing for Kristy to
well, oftentimes
recently I had to get a little extra medication because I was way beyond help. I needed something to pull me out of my funk so that I could realize that life is still beautiful, right? So it really is true. Take a lemon and make some lemonade out of it. Not every situation has to be the end of something. And if you could constantly just look at that and keep that in the forefront of your mind, when I lost the house and the fire, I was like, it's okay, we'll rebuild. It's not the same as what we had, but we can get everything back and we'll make new memories, right? And so then at every stage, you just have to look at this okay, what can I learn from this? What can I take from it? And where can I go forward? Because I don't want to live in that. I don't want to live in despair. I don't want to live in misery. I hate being miserable. It takes so much more work to be miserable than it does just to be happy. And so if you just try to always focus on how can I just be happy with this, and how can I make this a better moment for myself? And that's what I've always told my girls. Now, my husband, he's a little bit of a different case. He doesn't always see it quite like I do. And I pull the happy and I kind of show him the way to go. And he usually comes along with it, but he's also the one that has to deal with this and has a lot of guilt for how his disability has impacted our family.
Probably fear. I bet there's a lot of fear there.
Well, he had no control over it. It's uncontrollable guilt. And the point is not think badly of the victims, but the caretaker. No one talks about the toll it takes on the caretaker.
Nobody talks about that.
If you go down,
checked on me. Do you know that?
And what's that?
Nobody checked on me.
But he was the focus. And if you go down, the entire ship goes down.
Yep. And that's when I finally talked about grief and how I was feeling. And I read her post and I was like, I have to take care of me, because if I don't take care of me, all of this will stop. All of it. He won't work. I won't work. My kids won't finish school. Like everything's going to stop. We'll lose the house. We'll have to go back to Pennsylvania in the cold. I was like, so I started to just say, like, I have to take care of me. And so I try to take care of me as much as possible. So you know what? If my dishes sit in the sink and I don't do a load of dishes in the morning when I go home and I lay down and take a nap in bed, oh well.
Let them.
Let them sit. That's what I say. If I don't care if I have to go buy new underwear because we ran out of underwear because they're all dirty. I'll buy new underwear. I don't care. Amazon. That's what
You
Amazon.
have to. You have to. I mean, it's a survival attitude, no question.
I don't get to the grocery store. I gave my daughter my other Costco membership, so she goes grocery shopping for me, and she has a really cute little car that she loves driving. We pay for all their gas, and we pay for all of their stuff, so that, and in turn, they are like my other half, both of them, and they're just amazing. My girls have just like, they have set goals for themselves, and they're very ambitious, and I'm so proud of them. I'm so proud of them.
Kristy, there's not no surprise. Like, listen, just I cannot believe I would listen to you talk all day long if we could. I think it's incredible, like just what you've been through. And I think your story is just so inspiring and insightful and just incredible to hear about the things that you've done, how you've overcome them. And then you get to work with families who are sometimes going through the most, traumatic or most beautiful moment of their lives as well, too, as you work, in the mother baby unit. And so you're experiencing all that as well, too. So know that we care about you. And that I'm so glad that our paths have crossed. And I think that if anything, this is a reminder that we should all be checking in on people, right? Like we don't wait to see that post on LinkedIn, like, call somebody and reach out to them, someone you haven't spoken to, or, if you know someone's going through something, call both parts of them, be there for the mom of the child who's sick, but also get something for the child, and think about, or the husband or the spouse. And I just think that I'm so grateful you decided to come on and share this with us. I think it's Eric, right? You and Eric. Yeah. 25 years, incredible. Obviously, it's a testament to your relationship of all the things you guys have been through. So thank you for taking time to share that with us today.
You're welcome.
And when I first said, "What's your story?"
I told you it was going to build.
Well, and I'm sure there's so much more to it. We'll have to have you back for sure. But thank you so much. It's incredible. Thank you to also first of all, I love the support you're getting in your community. It's just such a great lesson. Everything you told us was such a great lesson of how we can help people when sometimes we don't know how to help. You gave us so many great ideas. So
would Eric come back with you possibly?
Maybe because I told the first part of the story, he would. I don't know. Maybe
work it gently.
Yeah. They're starting to get ready for training camp up there, and they've had some change and some things. So he had to do extra training today on some stuff for the indoor training field. So otherwise,
our schedule is extremely flexible.
Well, I don't know if Eric's listening. Hopefully he will listen to it, but I think, you have been an incredible wife and partner and supporter, and I'm sure he is as well too. And knowing that you're a Taylor Swift fan, I'm just saying, when the Kansas City game comes next year, I don't know where it's being played, but I would say that a really great way to thank your wife for her birthday and for Christmas and an anniversary would be to get you a ticket at that game, at the chance that she might walk by.
Eric, they might be calling you real soon. Stay tuned. Keep your phone free.
Thank you, Kristy. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. And we'll let you know, when this is launched. Listeners obviously listening to it now, but thank you for being a part of this. And we appreciate you so much.
Should we play Shake It Off? Shake It Off now?
I know, right? That's what it is. New version of Shed Your Funk. Shake It Off.
That's right. That's my thing. Yes, I love it. Thank you.
She said
so
funk,
much.
by the way.
Kristy,
Funk.
good to see you.
Funk, yeah.
Thanks. Bye.
Hey, stay well. Be healthy. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey, thank you for tuning into today's What's Your Story podcast.
To learn more or share your story, go to JaimeMarco.com. That's www.JaimeMarco.com. And we will see you next time.